Every day here on Sibos TV, we're picking the brains of leading financial journalists for their take on what's been said in the Sibos sessions so far across this packed schedule.
All of it has been must-see content, of course, but what from yesterday's schedule has caught the eye of our experts? Well, today those experts are Joe Parsons, Deputy Editor of Global Custodian, and we're joined once again by Chris Hall, Editor of ESG Investor and writer for Sibos Issues. Good morning to the both of you.
Morning.
Morning. Joe, let's start with you first. Looking back on Monday, it was all about delivering digital value. Then yesterday, Tuesday, it was focused on responsible innovation. So from your perspective, how did yesterday's panel sessions reflect the themes of that day?
Of course, and thanks for having me on. So as you mentioned, yesterday's theme centred on delivering digital value. And we saw that in the sessions on trade digitalisation and on central bank digital currencies, where a lot of industry work has been made in utilising sort of technologies like DLT and blockchain. The keynote from JP Morgan's Jamie Dimon also noted how the crisis accelerated their digitalisation pipeline. And one point he mentioned that was, it normally would have taken about 2 years to get people signed to electronic signatures. They got it done in 2 weeks. So that was a really interesting point that sort of got carried on into Tuesday's sessions, where a lot of the topics were raised about providing responsible innovation at a time where some business models have been completely turned upside down because of the crisis, and technology really helped them to overcome that. And those are some of the main things that came out of yesterday.
Chris, it's always good to have you on. Welcome back to Sibos. Now, you listened in on The View from Atop with Alison Rose, CEO at NatWest. And I understand she had a special guest as well as a green angle on responsible innovation. Tell us more.
Thanks, Johnny. Yes, like a number of the View from the Tops, there seems to have been a kind of trend this year to do share the spotlight, and Alison Rose of NatWest decided to do so with Nicholas Stern, who is a well-known British academic and economist. Previously was a chief economist at the World Bank, but more recently he's done a lot of work relating to climate change. And he's a high-level advisor to COP26 in Glasgow next year. And he's also been recently appointed as kind of independent climate advisor to NatWest Group to kind of verify that the kind of actions that they're taking are actually kind of meaningful from the point of view of keeping climate increase levels down to as close to 1.5% as possible. So he was laying out a number of the facts about how the finance industry can kind of make a difference, and talking with Alison about the kind of things that NatWest were already doing.
And Joe, you were listening into two high-profile CEO conversations as well. In this case, the talkers were BNY Mellon's Todd Gibbons and Microsoft's Satya Nadella. So what did you get as the key takeaways from their discussion?
Sure. This was a conversation with two of the sort of biggest names in the industry. You had the CEO of one of the largest companies in the world and the CEO of the largest global custodian in the world. So Nadella started off by saying how the pandemic caused massive constraints and challenges on many fronts, where businesses had to sort of dig deep in order to first respond, then recover, and then also at the same time reimagine how they had to do their core business all in real time. And in this sense, digital technology has really been core to this effort. And he said that now the firms are starting to rethink about client interaction and how they're going to manage relationships. So with this, on the flip side, so BNY Mellon's Todd Gibson, really explained that the pandemic has underlined the importance of scale, and clients, need to outsource to take advantage of that. And that is no surprise, given that the entire sort of BNY Mellon business model is based on outsourcing. But an interesting point he mentioned is that he said client expectation around reliability, experience, transparency is much higher than probably what providers have been used to from their institutional clients. And that's mainly because their clients want that same look and feel of what consumers get with Amazon and Google and Microsoft as well. And that kind of really reflected in a recent partnership that BNY Mellon did with Microsoft a couple of months ago, where they're sort of creating new solutions that were previously not imagined a few years ago. One example given to mention that BNY Mellon are now able to provide tools that can predict the probability of a settlement fail and what they can do to mitigate that. I'm sure that would have been coming very handy in March and April when we had settlement volumes and settlement fails sort of really spike at the height of volatility. So in that sense, technology is increasingly becoming a differentiator for banks and financial services firms. And in this conversation, Gibbons added that the bank is starting to take more advantage of sort of new cutting-edge tech and to help sort of overcome some of that tech debt that they have to deal with. And what this kind of pointed to is that custodians are now sort of almost becoming some of the largest managers of investment data in the world, and the value that they can bring to that data and trying to overcome some of the pain points of managing that data. That's where they sort of see the next level of services coming through.
Talking of the pandemic, it was the topic of Tuesday's big issue debate. What did you make of that, Chris?
Well, it was a very interesting session, and it was there was a number of kind of contrasts and comparisons between the approaches of two global banks, one European, Societe Generale, and one North American, TD Bank. Some similar experiences and some different ones. They really looked at the kind of response of the bank through or the banking industry really through three different lenses in terms of their kind of business continuity plans, their kind of leadership behaviours, and the impact on the kind of general progress towards digitization of their services. All three aspects were quite interesting. But one of the points really made was about kind of leadership response and how leadership teams kind of directed their banks to adapt. And Greg Keeley of TD Bank made the point that there was lessons that had really been learned from banks having to compete with smaller and more agile competitors over the last decade or so in terms of fintechs that had targeted niche areas of business and make life difficult for banks in a number of areas. The kind of skills and processes that fintechs have brought to the industry in terms of being able to kind of quickly respond to a market need, bring out a solution and tweak it, and in blink of an eye almost. Banks have kind of taken that on board in terms of their responses to changes in customer need, and also just having flatter management structures. Banks have always been kind of considered to be slightly kind of hierarchical, but Greg's point was really that the lesson of dealing with fintechs and working in the same kind of competitive landscape as them has actually helped banks to be more responsive to the pandemic.
Well, gentlemen, we'll have to leave that there, but thank you very much for starting your day with us. We hope you enjoy another packed day at Sibos. That's Joe Parsons, Deputy Editor of Global Custodian, and of course, Chris Hall, Editor of ESG Investor and writer for Sibos Issues.